Hello, and welcome back to the Transform Wellness Clinic. I'm Dr. Bradford Perkins, and today we're going to talk about metabolic inflammation, one of the main drivers of aging and chronic disease. So what is metabolic inflammation? It's also called metaflammation. It is a chronic low-grade inflammation in the body. It affects our metabolism, affects our brain, and it affects our immune system. So when we have metabolic inflammation, it can lead to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, weight gain and obesity. It can lead to brain fog, memory loss, actually a shrinking of a part of the brain called the hippocampus. It can even lead to dementia. It leads to heart disease, abnormal cholesterol levels, bone loss, osteopenia, osteoporosis. It can lead to autoimmune disease, hormone balance. So you can see that metabolic inflammation is really the base of all chronic disease. But the question is, what causes it? So we're going to talk through some root causes today. The first is visceral fat. So that's the fat that accumulates around our organs inside our belly. This type of fat is an endocrine organ. It releases inflammatory markers such as IL-6 and TNF-alpha. The more visceral fat we have a lower adiponectin, which is our insulin sensitizer. So lower adiponectin, more insulin resistance. So this fuels the inflammation, insulin resistance, and the immune dysfunction in our body. Next is just our standard American diet. We eat a lot of processed food, ultra-processed food, the seed oils, all that leads to inflammation in the body. And these types of foods are very nutrient poor. So that leads into some micronutrient deficiencies, which doesn't allow our body to function optimally. How do we improve this? A Mediterranean style diet focusing on extra virgin olive oil, fruits, vegetables, seeds, good quality protein in fish. We also want to focus on whole foods, lots of fiber, 35, 40 plus grams of fiber, and focusing on those healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil. Next cause of metabolic inflammation is insulin resistance. Now this is a two-way street because high insulin increases inflammation and inflammation worsens insulin resistance. And what we see is even if your blood sugar is 90, which a lot of doctors are going to say is normal, starts to raise disease risk. Next is poor sleep. Number 4. So when we don't get good quality sleep or not enough sleep, we have higher CRP, which is a marker of inflammation, higher cortisol, blood sugar issues, and higher insulin. It also doesn't allow our brain to clear out toxins. That's in our lymphatic system in our brain. So when we don't get good quality sleep, we build up toxins in our brain. So now we have inflammation going up, NAD going down. So how do we help with poor sleep? That's with good sleep hygiene. Magnesium, either threonate or glycinate can help. Melatonin can help. Understanding your sleep with trackables, it does help as well. Number 5 is toxins. We live in a very toxic world. We get exposed to microplastics and BPA, that's from plastic, lots of heavy metals. Mold is very common to be exposed to, either moisture damaged buildings or mold coming through our food supply. And pesticides on our fruits and vegetables drive chronic inflammation. So that burdens our detox system, which is in our liver, our kidneys, our lymphatic system, which is kind of this drainage system our body has. And this activates our immune system, increases oxidative stress, leading to more inflammation. So how do we support detox? There are certain things called binders. Sauna is a great way. Glutathione, either precursors or taking a glutathione, either topically IV or liposomal glutathione. There are pros and cons to each one. That's not part of this talk. And then as far as nutrition-wise, making sure you're getting your cruciferous vegetables, your broccoli, cauliflower, if you're not sulfur averse, then garlic and onions and things like that. Next is stress. We live in a very stressful world. I'm out here in Silicon Valley, lots of stress in this area, but constant stress leads to high cortisol, which leads to immune dysregulation. So that decreases something called your vagal tone, which is part of your parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system calms our body down. So think rest and digest. So if that's reduced, we're more in the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. So we have higher fasting heart rates. We can feel more anxious. High cortisol also affects your gut health and sleep quality. You can't get good quality sleep if your cortisol is high in the evening, because cortisol and melatonin kind of, one goes up, one goes down. So if one's always up, you don't get that melatonin rise. Chronic stress raises something called IL-6, which is an inflammatory marker, suppresses repair of the body. So how do we support this? Breath work. I like to talk about deep breathing. Take big, deep belly breaths in like a 4, 5, 6. In for 4, hold for 5, out for 6. Some people do 4, 4, 4. You can do parasympathetic support. That's doing vagus nerve exercises. There's a great book on that if you want to look on Amazon or Google. And adaptogens are herbs that have been shown to improve the stress response. Next is exercise. So sedentary lifestyle slows circulation, slows detox, and lowers our immunity. So a lot of us spend hours and hours at a desk typing away. That is definitely affecting our health. But on the flip side of that, over-exercising, so chronic training for marathons, endurance training over an hour a day regularly, that actually raises cortisol, suppresses recovery, and increases reactive oxygen species, which is part of oxidative stress. So you don't want to be sedentary. You don't want to over-exercise unless you're supporting it correctly with the time off and with nutrients. But balance is key. I look at zone 2 cardio, where you can exercise, where you can still talk, but you can't sing. Resistance training is going to be important, and making sure you're getting your recovery days in. Next is gut health, something called leaky gut. So that's when the tight junctions and the inner lining of the intestines start to separate, something called leaky gut. This has been proven on electron microscopy, so this is a real condition. So when that gut barrier breaks down, it allows bacterial toxins, something called LPS, lipopolysaccharide, to get into our bloodstream. This triggers an immune response via something called toll-like receptor 4 and NF-kappa beta. It's really one of the most potent endotoxins in our body. And leaky gut is linked to, and LPS is linked to brain fog, fatigue, and insulin resistance. And number 9 is going to be senescent cells. Some of us call them zombie cells. These cells just don't die. So they secrete something called SASP. These are inflammatory messengers that damage the nearby cells. So not all the zombie cells are active, but if one is secreting SASP, then it starts to damage the other cells. And these can be found all over the place in our fat, blood vessels, joints, brain. How to help with zombie cells is a whole different talk that we'll have later. But just want to let you know this is a cause of metabolic inflammation. And number 10 is mitochondrial dysfunction. So in the end, the mitochondria are the little engines of our cells. If those aren't functioning, we are not producing energy. So that leads to low energy, more oxidative stress, insulin resistance, promotes aging and metabolic disease. This is its own hallmark of aging, separate than metabolic inflammation. So this is really the core of, as well, of most chronic disease. So you have metabolic inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction. That's really what's going on inside our cells that leads to the symptoms that we see on the outside of our body. There are ways to support this. One is we need to figure out what's damaging the mitochondria. But to support it, you can do NAD. Coenzyme Q10 is important. MitoPure is another supplement. And methylene blue can help. When it comes to mitochondrial dysfunction, why it's so important, why we talk about it, is that when our cells are working normally, we make ATP, which is cellular energy. If it's working normally, we're making 32 to 36 ATP for every glucose molecule. When it's not working, we're only making 2 to 4. So you can see that really can lead to fatigue, brain fog, especially since a lot of the mitochondria is in our brain for brain function. So metabolic inflammation is reversible. So understanding what the cause is allows us to correct it. So there's testing. You can do high sensitivity CRPs. You can do LPPLA2, that is for a cardiovascular marker. Some people do galectin-3. Some people will check immune markers like IL-6. If we think it's gut related, you can do comprehensive stool analysis. I like the gut zoomer personally. Zonulin you can test. You can test LPS for antibodies. If you want to look at your biologic age, there's something called the Dunedin Pace. There's Grimm age. You can get different tests on aging. But when it comes to biologic aging tests, you're only as young as your oldest marker. So if you have all these great markers, but you have one marker saying that you're older, that's how old your body is inside, not your chronologic age, but your biologic age. How do you treat metabolic inflammation? So you treat the root cause. You want to get on an anti-inflammatory diet, focusing on olive oil, cold water fish, greens, berries. You want to support the mitochondria. NMN is an NAD precursor. Another option, NMN, is NR, nicotinamide riboside. Or you can do IV NAD to really boost up your energy. There's something called PQQ you can do, alpha lipoic acid, coenzyme Q10. That's just getting the mitochondria working. Not part of listed there is, the other part is your B vitamins. You got to have B vitamins and iron for your mitochondria to work well as well. Then there are senolytics. These are focused on treating senescent cells. There's things like quercetin, fisetin, spermidine. If we're going to repair the gut, we're looking at something called L-glutamine to repair that tight junction. We need to bind toxins. This is where we do binders and probiotics to help rebuild the gut there. And then there are peptides that can be used. I'm not going to go too in-depth in there, but there are a number of peptides that can either help with inflammation, they can help with healing the guts, BPC-157, KPV, lorazepam for leaky gut. Thymosin alpha-1 helps rebalance the immune system away from producing so much inflammation. Other things, lifestyle, you can do red light therapy, sauna, cold plunge. Intermittent fasting helps. Fasting mimicking diets can help. Doing heart rate variability training, vagus nerve stimulation, that can be with an external stimulator or with exercises. And again, looking at exercise, doing that zone 2 cardio, some resistance training 1 to 2 times a week. A way to hack that is something called an ARCS trainer. There's another device called a Vasper device that helps do HIIT training. It has great data behind it. So you can age better. We can lower inflammation, slow your body's aging process. Metabolic inflammation is modifiable and measurable. So we can help you build a body that resists disease, recover faster, and perform better. Thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoyed this talk. And if you have any questions, just drop them down in the comments. And I hope everyone has a great day.